Welcome to the Scottsdale Vibes podcast. I'm Alicia Haygood. All right, this week wraps up our Scottsdale City candidates episodes. We have already heard from 6 of them. We're going to hear from the last 3 today. Again, please go vote. Ballots are being mailed out July 5th. In-person voting is July 30th. You're going to hear me say this throughout every single episode because I find it so critically important that you use your right to vote. It doesn't matter whom you vote for. Go vote for your candidate, but here's the opportunity to get to know them. Every candidate was given the same 4 questions. Every candidate was given 15 minutes, and here's the opportunity to get to know them on a closer basis. So this week, we're going to hear from the last 3 candidates. We have Steve Casares, Mason Gates, and Adam Kwasman. So stay tuned for more. Buying a home can be scary and sometimes frustrating, but all of that can go away with the right realtor. And that's where Sean Shackleton with the Shackleton Group is here for you. Sean has over 25 years experience in real estate. She's here to get you what you want and won't settle for less. She's experienced, knowledgeable, and understands this market, which these days is always changing. Take the stress out of your next home purchase by calling Sean at 480-734-7277. You can also find her at theshackletongroup.com. Steve Casares is a West Point cadet and a commissioned intelligence officer in the Army of the United States, serving 18 years of combined active duty, reserve, federal, and corporate service. Thank you so much for your service, Steve. He has a desire to preserve our city and simultaneously protect its unique character and identity. So let's get started with Steve and see how he plans to do these things. Steve, let's start with the homeless population and affordable housing. Please talk about your plans to handle these issues here in Scottsdale.
Yes, let's start with our homeless population. The Phi Institute currently has a good data set on who's homeless, who's not, and where they're at. They're doing a great job. But I think that is skewed because when it comes to homeless persons, it doesn't account for people living at home with parents who may be recovering drug addicts. It doesn't account for people who are coming across our southern border. The bottom line with homeless for me is we need to treat everyone with compassion. Compassion. So in addition to the persons who are actually out on the streets, I spoke with them directly. I went to the Frank Lloyd Wright and 101 intersection. Mm-hmm. I went to Thomas and Scottsdale Road, and I went to another location eastbound on McCormick. And I just went up and I asked homeless persons on the street, why are you out here? I talked with 5. 3 are addicts, and 2 were priced out of housing. Mm-hmm. And the astonishing thing to me, they were all lifelong Scottsdale residents. So it was beautiful. We hugged and prayed. I'm not going to put faith into it, but we hugged and prayed. So right now with the homeless population, we need to look at affordable housing because there's a direct correlation between affordable housing, overdevelopment, which you're welcome to ask me about, and homeless persons. And the way to solve that, I think that any new multi-unit construction, anything that's new, that's approved after, assuming I make it through the primary and through the general, any new multi-unit construction should be provided specifically for those persons and for senior citizens and for recovering addicts.
Very nice. We live in the desert. Water is not always a luxury if we don't handle it now and for the future. So what are your plans to help Scottsdale residents keep their water?
I think it's going to we're going back to development. You can call it overdevelopment. You can call it pace of development. For me personally, I think it's unconstrained development. I'm an economist by trade with my graduate degree. And just looking at some of the data, particularly the case study at 148th and Rio Verde with that water situation, which was resolved. I think it was the best solution. I think it's a good case study, but I'm thinking, I'm not a doom and gloom sayer, but I think we got 5 to 6 years left before we have to start contracting water. So you can't talk about water without talking about the pace of development.
The Blue Zone Initiative is something that it could be a great addition to our community to help our community live their healthiest, best lifestyle. So how will you help make Scottsdale a Blue Zone certified city?
I will candidly admit, I don't know. I need to do more research, and that's on me.
Yeah. Blue Zones is great. It's with Honor Health, they're doing it, and it's just how to make Scottsdale a healthier city. So what are some ways that you think that Scottsdale could become a healthier city for its residents and help their residents live their healthiest life?
We need to focus on mental health. So of my 3 primary initiatives, in no order of precedence, veteran advocacy, mental health, and then looking at the pace of development. So I'm really big on mental health. People actually talk about that. And when I say people, I mean it's almost a trendy thing.
Yeah.
But I actually want to do something about it. We have the 3 best healthcare systems that we could possibly have. We have a small enough population, which isn't too large. We have approximately 255,000 persons who live here. Our median age is approximately 45. So basically, when it comes to mental health, and to answer the broader question of how do we take care of people's health with a Blue Zone initiative, we need to increase resources for mental health care. I'm more fiscally conservative by nature. I have nothing to hide on that. But there's no reason why we can't increase and create a new initiative. Assuming that I get through the primary, assuming that I make it through the general election and have the opportunity to serve with my colleagues, I just want to be remembered for being a veteran who's representing the city, someone who was able to constrain some of the I consider overdevelopment, and hit me hard on another question. But if I'm remembered for anything, I want to be remembered for creating legislation for mental health care, and that's what will let people live their happiest lives. Because I don't know if you know, and don't answer the question because I'm the one being questioned, but there are people out there suffering. Like I'm seeing it when I came back home last July. Family, friends, associates, not mafia associates, but other associates. Not all of them are suffering, but there is someone, and it's empirical data, according, I think it was University of Pennsylvania published it about 10 years ago. You're most closely associated with the 5 closest people outside your family. And when you go beyond that, everyone knows someone who's suffering mentally. I want to be remembered for having the funds so we can take care of our health, our mental health.
Very nice. We're constantly dealing with short-term rentals and noise complaints. Yep. We all know that we're a destination city for vacations and parties. The City Council has passed many new rules and regulations to short-term rental homeowners, but the problem doesn't seem to be going away. So what are your suggestions, Steve? So
this was just at the last, or on May 6, 2024, we, the council, I don't want to speak like a member of the council yet, but this was an initiative. So if you give me approximately 30 seconds, I'll pull this up because I knew the short-term rental question was going to come up. Right. Consent agenda. All right. For anyone who wants reference, May 6th, 2024, consent agenda, item number 11, for the adoption of ordinance number 4626 and the adoption of ordinance number 4627. It was talking about public nuisances. Let's just say public idiots. Sorry, pardon my language. So it was voted. I think it was the right decision. When it comes to short-term rentals, this is where I struggle with, because I believe that we have a constitutional right anywhere in the United States. If you are a law-abiding, tax-paying citizen, you have a constitutional right to run a business out of your home. You have a constitutional right to engage with any business that you want. However, it comes down to the intersectionality of 3 things: zoning, constitutional rights, and ordinances. So allow me to speak to each of those 3 points. Most of these short-term rentals are located in our South Corridor. They're located in old neighborhoods. I live in Greyhawk community at North 76 and Thompson Peak Parkway. So we have lots of short-term rentals there as well. So we're talking about zoning. We have to consider what was the original intention when we zoned. So how would that look about rezoning? I'm not sure. In terms of ordinances, I think we should slap harsher fines on first-time offenders and especially on repeat offenders. Okay, because people who moved here decades ago, it goes back to mental health. It's not good for your health to have someone who's coming in, who wants to enjoy our city, and then you're conducting drag races and you're doing other items. I try to be a positive person, but also there was a short-term rental. I think it was maybe about a week or two ago. I'll have to check the database that's publicly available, but there was a trafficking ring operating out of that short-term rental. And someone needs to fact check me on that because I don't remember where it's at. And then we talk about constitutional rights. I believe in the right to have a business. Like I said, run out of your home, engage with whomever you'd like to. But it wasn't the intention 30 or 40 years ago when things were zoned that, hey, eventually you're going to have an Airbnb. You're going to have 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old young men, women having drag races, going to parties, and whilst enjoying tourism. So my plan for short-term rentals would be, we got to look at rezoning. We need to look at slapping harsher fines for first-time repeat offenders. And from there, just be a good neighbor. If you own a short-term rental, so someone actually put it to me perfectly this way. I'm not going to say where she lives or which neighborhood, but she's STR, and she does Airbnb. And she gave her neighbor her number. She said, if there's any illicit activity, if there's anything that goes wrong, you call me right away. And that's where it has to start.
Right.
So I hope that's clear. Short-term rentals it's a complex issue, but that's where I stand.
We have a few minutes left, a little under 5 minutes. So I would like to know from you, why should we vote for Steve for City Council?
I'm speaking from the heart. And sorry, maybe it's the old professor in me. Maybe it's the philosopher. But so we moved here in October of 1998. I had the honor to represent our community, our congressional district, by serving as cadet at West Point, following in my parents' footsteps as military officers. My parents have been here the entire time. Most people have two parents. Some people have blended families. I'm blessed with three. My parents still live here. My friends are here. I'm seeing them raise families. And hopefully this is where I'll raise a family of my own one day. Assuming, regardless of what happens with council, I want to teach. I'm working on my certification to be a teacher because I fell in love with it so much. And I'll be hopefully next semester teaching at my old high school, Notre Dame Prep, where we were the first graduating class in 2005. So the reason to vote for me, and you have a slate of other excellent candidates, and I like everyone. I do. I really do. I'd be happy to work with anyone at any time. But I'm a commissioned intelligence officer in the Army of the United States. I'm thorough, I'm disciplined, and I exercise sound judgment. From those 3 points, that comes from serving in Afghanistan, directly maneuvering our soldiers under fire. And thank you for giving me the honor to do that. Disciplined. I served in Arlington National Cemetery for 2 years and conducted 85 dignified burials, 2 transfers of remains, and countless other events as an officer. And when you're in a place where you have approximately 8 million visitors a year that go through the cemetery, you have to be disciplined. And sound judgment, again, in Afghanistan, and also exercising sound judgment as an assistant professor of ethics at West Point. You have to exercise sound judgment in each of those situations. And this is my home. It's our home. And I mean that. That's not a punchline, but this is, my parents are here. My friends are here. And hopefully I'll raise a family of my own here one day.
Very nice. Well, thank you, Steve, so much for your service and dedication to Scottsdale, to our country, and there above. Best of luck in the elections coming up. I mean that for you and for all the candidates. Please go do your research, and you can find out more about Steve on his website, steveforscottsdale.com. The link will be directly in the description of this episode. And you can also watch this on our YouTube channel for the full video to get to see Steve and get to know him as well. In the meantime, please go vote, please go vote, please go vote, because that is the most important right that you have. Take advantage.
And I would like to also on the voting thing, if you don't mind, Alicia. So also on my website, 2 items. Obviously, we have a bunch of small business owners, and we all live around Maricopa County.
Yeah.
Maricopa County is huge,
Yes.
right? If you're from like anywhere else but Arizona, you don't realize how big Arizona and Maricopa County is. So not only do I have Scottsdale voting information on my website, I have Maricopa County voting information. And with the July 30 primaries coming up, I want everyone to vote. I'd rather have someone vote against me who's informed and good conscience than someone blatantly checking a box. So
Yes.
as an FYI.
And he does. I'm looking at his website right now, so I appreciate that. All right, go vote Steve for Scottsdale.com and find out more information about all the candidates. Best of luck, Steve, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Alicia. God bless.
Mason Gates is a 20-year-old from Kansas City, Missouri, where he grew up in a family of 8. He started 3 businesses before his 18th birthday and began getting involved in politics at the ripe young age of 13 years old. Most notably, Mason is known for serving as the Director of Development and PR for 40 Love Org, which raises money for homeless outreach organizations. He's an American Legion Boys State alumni, which is amongst the most selective educational programs in the country for government instruction. Mason is the first citizen in the program's 85-year history to pass the Missouri Boys State Bar exam without attending the law school. Mason attended ASU as a National Scholarship Recipient for the U.S. Army Reserve Officers Training Corps and is also a graduate brother of the fraternity Phi Gamma Delta, or FIJI. He now works as a commercial investment sales agent and a marketing director for a national hospitality conglomerate. So, Mason, thank you so much for being here today. Let's get started.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we want to talk about, let's start with the homeless, how your plans are to handle the homeless population and affordable housing here in Scottsdale.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we need to address is really what, affordable housing means, because it's a term that gets thrown around a lot, and it's a question of, is it government subsidized housing? Is it, housing that is affordable to this group of people or this group of people? But I think the main thing we need to acknowledge is that first and foremost, this is Scottsdale, right? And so I think what's important to know about Scottsdale is we're not Tempe, we're not Phoenix. We don't cater, we don't need to cater. And the reason why we thrive and why we're such a popular destination and why people will pay thousands of dollars to come here for all of a week, 5 days out of the year, is because it's a safe community. It's because it's an exclusive community. It's because it's a very affluent community. For as long as we have that character, people are going to want to continue to live here and they're going to ask for more. And there's a good saying, it's, you give an inch and they take a mile. And this is pretty evident in Tempe. I mean, you look at Tempe. I actually lived in Tempe. I lived in Kansas City, where they have, big pushes for Section 8 housing and other forms of affordable housing that maybe don't have the, government subsidies with them. But the problem with it is there's always going to be more demand for it. People are going to continue to ask for more and more and more and more. And then you're going to have things like rent control. And we've seen how that's torn apart cities like LA. And I refuse to let that happen here in Scottsdale. I think we need to focus more than anything on continuing and expanding the development of single family homes more than making housing affordable per se. I also, don't really like the fact that affordable housing, in particular with government subsidies, does have strings attached to it, right? I mean, there's obligations on behalf of the municipality that they do have to accommodate any and all. I'm running for Scottsdale City Council. I'm not running for Tempe City Council. I'm not running for Phoenix City Council. I'm not here to cater, candidly. Like, I'm here to represent the interests of the constituents, and the constituents have made it very clear to me that they are not interested in seeing more density and, more affordable housing. There was actually a bill that was just passed. I think it was HB 2721. And I sat in a meeting at Via Linda Senior Center the last 2 Wednesdays ago. And there, I mean, they talked about, middle housing, which is pretty much a euphemism for, affordable housing without government subsidies. And the outcry just from that alone was, top notch. I mean, people don't want to see less quality developments in Scottsdale. If there's going to be any development, it needs to be high quality. As far as your question about homelessness, I think right now, candidly, I vehemently oppose what the mayor's policy is, which is pretty much taking taxpayer dollars and throwing them at a hotel and putting homeless people there without the requirement of sobriety. I take issue with that because I think we're confusing, enablement with compassion. And there's two different things. And I get a lot of flack for this because I am a very blunt person. I say it like it is, how I see it. And, I don't see that as beneficial to that community. I think what we need to do is we need to increase the ability for these people to start taking responsibility a lot of times for their actions. And I understand that there are, members of the homeless population that unfortunately, have, a history of trauma or maybe mental illness. And that's really unfortunate. But there's also a lot of drug addiction. And, you can just, drive down rural in Tempe and you'll see it firsthand. And so I guess what I'd like to see is a little bit more actual compassion, which is the ability to make mental health accessible to those individuals, or rather than just say, let's put them in a hotel or let's put them on a bus to Tempe, right? I think there is somewhat of a middle ground. I will say the issue is not black and white. It's very gray. It's a very tough issue. This is why, I'm against density, because this is what density causes. This is what urban sprawl causes. And typically, the higher the population, and especially when you have rapid growth in population in an unsustainable period, then you're going to notice that the effects, not only economically, but socially, are pretty detrimental long term.
Thank you for that. One of the things I want to bring up is the water situation here in the desert. We live in the desert. Water tends to be a luxury that some of us see. If we don't handle it now, what are your plans to help Scottsdale residents keep their water for the future?
Yeah, so we actually have one of the best, state-of-the-art water facilities in the country, in my opinion. We're able to recycle a good amount of our water. I will say, I think, the best way that we can really preserve our water is continue to fight for our sovereignty with regards to the municipality in and of itself, because we're constantly trampled on, which we'll get into later, by the legislature and their kind of, need to govern us despite our independence and the fact that we are a charter city. And so I take issue with that. I think first and foremost, we do need to declare that we are our own sovereign. We have sovereignty and we should be able to, govern in that way. I would say other than that, I'm not really looking to cater, like I said, to other cities. So I'm not going to be trying to give away water to this guy and that guy and the other guy. This is Scottsdale. And if I'm running for Scottsdale City Council, I want Scottsdale residents to make sure that they're taken care of and that they have sustainable, amounts of water. And with regards to, how we can really mitigate that, I would say the first thing is going to be stopping the overdevelopment. A lot of the members of the current city council are very in favor of increasing high density cookie cutter apartments that not only are they not conducive to the character of Scottsdale, but they're also just not good. They cause a lot of issues. For example, congestion, sustainability, right? And there's a common, misnomer that, well, on a per square foot basis, they use less water. That's true. But think about how many apartments you can put on a single acre versus how many single family homes you can put on an acre, right? It's all about the way you phrase a statement like that. And it's also very dangerous to say things like that because it's extremely misleading. And so I think if we can start to push more single family home development, if at all, that would be, in my opinion, much more preferable than continuing to approve, upzonings for high density housing, because it just, again, it's not conducive to the character of Scottsdale. And long term, you're right, it's going to have some serious issues on our water sustainability.
The Blue Zone Initiative is a great addition to our community. So I'd like to hear from you how you'll help make Scottsdale Blue Zone certified.
Yeah, so I actually support a lot of the elements of that. I myself love to work out. I work out as much as I can. I think it's very important that people work out and keep themselves healthy in all areas. My only issue with it is, well, first of all, on pages 68 through 71 of the Blue Zone Blueprint, there's a lot of kind of notions that we need to start pushing more of this 15-minute city agenda that the World Economic Forum has been pushing on really everyone. And, that goes hand in hand with a lot of the issues that I stand opposed to, which are things like road diets, right? Things like high density housing and, walkable cities. There's parts of that are good, sure. But for the most part, when we look at it purely on a numbers basis and utility standpoint, for example, on road diets are used by 1% of the population for 7 months out of the year. Commuters nationwide, and this is probably higher here in Scottsdale, but nationwide, commuters on average use roads, for their vehicles. 76% of them are using them. And so in a cost benefit analysis, I have to ask, is it worth it to sacrifice that traffic lane? And also when we talk about the way Scottsdale was developed, most of it was developed post-World War II, which means it was designed for the automobile. And I can tell you right now, I love to work. And when I wake up in the morning at 5 a.m., as excited as I am to get into work, the last thing on my mind is, let me get on my bike. It's not really something that I think has a whole lot of value to the city of Scottsdale. That being said, I do love the fact that people want to get out and exercise, and I'm very supportive of that. That's why I'm very proud that we as Scottsdale have, I think it's 30 plus bike trails in the city. I mean, you can't go a mile really without seeing, a bike trail. I mean, realistically, Scottsdale's 31 miles long. On average, you're probably going to see one per mile. So I think there's plenty of opportunities in other places to ride your bike. And I understand it makes it more difficult, but also there's very conflicting studies about whether road diets actually make roads safer or whether they don't, because I think it's 70% of bike accidents actually occur in the middle of an intersection. So the question is, well, would a road diet, would a bike lane actually fix that? And so I think that's a part of it. As far as the rest of it, I don't really like the language that pushes DEI. I think DEI kind of divides more than it brings people together. So I probably wouldn't be super supportive of that. And the other thing that I don't really like about it would probably be just the overall push for lack of, independence and freedoms. Like, I know there's like a anti-smoking and anti-drinking policies in there that they kind of push on. I think generally speaking, people should be able to do whatever they want as long as they're not harming anyone. That's something I've always believed in. It's, kind of a more libertarian standpoint, but I've always believed that people should be free to do as they please as long as they're not harming anyone else while they're doing it. And so if somebody wants to smoke cigarettes or they want to drink alcohol, it may be bad for their body, but it's bad for their body. It's not bad for everyone else. And I understand why Scottsdale wants to, make the city healthier and make it this, destination even more so than it already is. But at the same time, I don't think people should have to sacrifice their rights for that.
Very nice. All right, we got about 4.5 minutes left. So I'm going to get to these last couple questions. We're constantly dealing with short-term rentals and noise complaints here. We are a destination city. We all know that. The city council's already passed many new rules and regulations to help with the short-term rental homeowners, but the problem doesn't seem to be going away. So what are your suggestions, Mason?
Yeah, well, Scottsdale City Council, this is where I will give them credit. They've actually been doing a pretty good job of trying their best to legislate it. Now, that being said, I think they're doing what they can right now. If I get in there, let's just say I'm mildly aggressive, right? So my goal would be to, A, use the city lobbyists to go to the legislature and kindly ask that we allow, that they allow us to have our sovereignty. If that doesn't work, I will personally go down to the Capitol and I will lobby. And if that doesn't work, I will file suit with the state legislature and say, you are violating our governance, our ability to govern our own municipality. And as a charter city, and this has been done previously in Tucson and Phoenix, they've sued the state legislature and won. And I will happily do that and back it because I think it's ridiculous that we, as a city, are not allowed to govern in the way that we want to, simply because a lot of the legislature and members in the legislature are being lobbied by these, short-term rental companies that are telling them, hey, no, we're not going to go against this because this is against free market enterprise or whatever. But it doesn't matter because it's causing a lot of lingering issues in Scottsdale. For example, I think it's close to 8,000 Airbnbs in Scottsdale right now. That's a problem because when you look at schools and you think about, well, who's going to go to the school when there's 8,000 Airbnbs, it causes problems. If people want to talk about affordable housing and the cost of housing would go down if we were able to effectively regulate these and make it more difficult, because people are able to buy homes for whatever they want as long as they're expecting a return on it. And so I think that's a big part of it as well.
Last question. Let me hear from you. Why should we in Scottsdale vote for Mason Gates?
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I love the work. I hate to sleep. I think there's really two ways you should evaluate a candidate that's running for Scottsdale or for really any governmental position. The two ways are going to be the nature of your character. So are you a principled person? Do you stand by what you say? Are you pandering to, depending on what room you're in, or do you actually believe in what you say? And two, I would just say it has to do with, really critical thinking, problem solving skills. And one thing I can tell you is both of those, when you look at me, I have both of those traits. And that's evidence through the fact that I am the only candidate who can actually sit here and tell you that I oversaw the erection of every single sign that we put on the intersection. I mean, I was out there from 9 p.m. to 4 a.m. by myself. I collected personally about 1,000 signatures for my own campaign. I have the traits that are required. I know how to work. I know how to, really be diligent and efficient. And this is evident through my fiscal responsibility, which a lot of people will be able to see when we put out our campaign finance report. But we saved about 60% on our sign costs by doing a lot of the work by myself, whether it's graphic design or the actual labor, whatever it may be. We saved a lot of the standard costs that candidates are paying. And I think that just goes to show that somebody, even though I'm young, right, I think it's a good thing. I have the energy, I have the passion to serve and lead our city. So,
well, go to votegates.com where you can find out more about Mason and his stance on the issues, his purpose behind running. Mason, best of luck to you in the upcoming election. Don't forget, ballots are mailed out July 5th. Go vote in person July 30th. Most importantly, doesn't matter who you vote for, just go vote. And as you've heard from all of the candidates, that is their biggest passion. Go vote. You have the right. Use it to your advantage. Mason, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck.
Thank you.
When it comes to protecting you, your family, and all your assets, you need to have someone that you can trust. And that's Jeremy Mueller of State Farm Insurance. Jeremy Mueller has lived in Scottsdale his whole life. How can anyone else know your needs more than someone who's been here and seen it all? Jeremy and his team are always ranked in the top % at State Farm. He cares, he's knowledgeable, and most importantly, he's always available. Don't believe me? Give him a call at 480-515-5223 or find him at jeremymueller.com. I'm sitting here with Adam Kwasman, who is running for Scottsdale City Council. And by the way, sorry, my voice is a little challenging right now. I am fighting the allergies, but I feel great. So I just want to let y'all know. Adam was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, where he developed a deep appreciation for community values and civic responsibility from an early age. His formative years instilled in him a commitment to service and a passion for making a positive impact on the lives of those around him. He earned his bachelor's from Tulane University and then a master's in economics from George Mason University and his JD from ASU, go Sun Devils, at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. His academic journey not only equipped him with a strong foundation of knowledge, but also fueled his desire to contribute meaningfully to society. He has 4 children, a beautiful wife, and is here to take time away from his busy schedule to sit with us and talk about what he is going to do for us at City Council. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
I'm excited. Let's get started. So I want to hear from you, Adam. Talk to me about your plans to handle the homeless situation here in Scottsdale as well as the affordable housing.
That's perfect. Homelessness is actually the reason why I got into the race. And I live in McCormick Ranch area, so Hayden and Ventura. A lot of times I like to take my kiddos, especially if I could split them up with the wife. We got 4 kids under the age of 8, so divide and conquer in that way, right? So I go to Chaparral Park. It's a few minutes away over in Jackrabbit and Hayden. And so I have the kids playing on a play structure, and conveniently, why Chaparral Park of all parks is because Arizona Game and Fish stocks it with trout in the winter. Now, this is very important. I'm a fly fisherman, so if I could get a couple casts in while the kids are having fun, it's a win-win, right? And I like to let them off the leash a little bit. Let them have about 100 yards distance between my children and me. And we had a scary moment in late October, early November, where 2 homeless people came up to my kids. They were the only ones playing on one of the play structures. It was a little bit of a quiet afternoon when I was taking them, and come right up to my children. Unfortunately, there's 2 types of people who are homeless that we categorize. I used to serve in the Arizona legislature, so dealing with the homelessness situation is very important to me, and finding nonpartisan solutions to these problems is very important. So you have cyclical homeless and then you have a type of homelessness that unfortunately is something that's far more permanent based on mental health issues and other whether it's drug addiction or mental health, right? So systematic, that we call that systematic homelessness. So unfortunately, these two individuals who came up to my children were of the latter sort. They were not in a place where they were able to help themselves in the best way, and they approached my children. And as a dad, I was, threw down the fly rod, ran right over to my children to make sure that they were okay. Because any adult going up to my kids, what are you doing, right? And you see what's happening in Scottsdale, especially after the zone was dispersed. And I understand why those who are in need would want to come to a place like Scottsdale. However, we have to make sure two things are protected, and this is where the city comes into play. The first is protecting private property rights to make sure that if there is a vagrancy situation, to be compassionate, but understanding compassion goes both ways, not just toward the individuals who are suffering from homelessness, but also those who have a private property right and want to make sure that their place of business or home is in a safe, comfortable, beautiful area. That's one. Number two are the city parks and public spaces. I understand, again, to be compassionate means making sure that we find real solutions, and being able to sleep in public parks and being able to sleep in the word, let's be honest of what it is, it's vagrancy. We want to make sure we limit vagrancy in addressing the problem. Now, what can we do for solutions? I love looking at a solutions-based approach, and whether it's homelessness, crime, development, or anything, traffic, I come from it from a family-first perspective. If you want to know anything about my candidacy for the city council, Kwasman is family first. So how can we as a community, as a neighborhood, help those who need that type of help? So for those who are cyclically homeless, we need to work with the legislature on both of these, because this is not just a Scottsdale issue. This is an Arizona issue that needs an Arizona solution. So the big leader in Arizona that's fighting homelessness and helping people who need help the most is a gentleman by the name of Matt Gress. He actually is the state legislator from Scottsdale. I'm proud to have his endorsement in one of my first endorsements for the city council. So that will what his most recent bill did was allocate resources throughout the state that would then go to the cities to help manage homeless crises. So whether that is more shelters that need to be built, more recovery centers for drug addiction, we want to make sure that those who are able to help themselves have a springboard to a better life, not get caught up in the safety net of government. So we have to do it in the right way. But Scottsdale itself should not be footing the entire bill for something that is a valley-wide problem, right? We need to all work together to have a real solution. Where I differ from others who are sitting on the city council and others who are running is I don't believe that subsidization, pure subsidization of housing, when you're not looking at a treatment-first approach, is the way to go. We need to have a treatment-first approach for those who need help, and also job programs that working with the Department of Economic Security to make sure that those who are cyclically homeless, not systematically homeless, have the opportunity to go as far as their God-given talents can take them.
I love that. We live in the desert. Water is always something that we need. It's not always a luxury, and if we don't handle it now, we could have an issue in the future. So what are your plans to help Scottsdale residents keep the water?
So I'm going to be honest with you. There's a lot for everybody to learn, but when it comes to anybody, and I put myself against any sitting city councilman or any candidate running, I understand water better than most because of my time at the legislature.
Okay.
When it comes to long-term water solutions, this is something we handled during the Brewer administration when I was there, or when it came to the Ducey administration or the current administration. Everybody deals with long-term water plans. Here's the great news. Scottsdale's water supply is strong. The Valley's water supply is strong. Phoenix is in a water management area that guarantees us 100 years of water. And where do these statistics come from? U of A has their agriculture school. They put up a report, I think twice a decade. They put up a comprehensive report.
Okay.
75% of water in the state of Arizona is used for agriculture. Okay. When it comes to the cities, though, in Phoenix, it's and in Scottsdale or in the West Valley, it's a different usage of that water because of the residential population. Okay. Now, we are in so much of a better position than Pinal County, where they're growing pecans. I mean, not to be against anybody's lifestyle, but a single pecan tree takes about 350 gallons of water every day and just will decimate our long-term water supply. They have their own issues. Let the state deal with that. Let Pinal County handle that. But when it comes to Scottsdale, a 100-year water supply is very much in the secured in our future, and that's free of any type of water recharge and recycling. Now, I'm also, on top of that, again, if I'm thinking about every issue has to do with families first, I care about my family currently, but also future generations. I want my grandchildren to be able to enjoy the same type of water availability that we have in this generation. Think of it as a long-term, nonpartisan solution. So where does water recharge and use of gray water come into play? It comes into play in places like golf courses. We should be utilizing those resources. Gray water should be for golf courses, and it should be for other types of, whether it's park watering and more on the land. I don't want the use of gray water in the homes. And here's where I differ from other candidates. Other candidates that are running they proudly display them licking ice pops made out of poop water. Let's be honest with what it is. Now, science has gone a long way. I'm not feeding my children poop water, because if we think about what goes into our toilets, it's not just our waste, it's also medicine, tremendous amount of medicine, and the hormones they're in. And we don't have the studies yet to be able to assure families, to assure moms and dads that their kids aren't ingesting something that can be terrible for them in the long run. Let's keep that for the golf courses and make sure that we are responsible with our water supply in our homes that utilizes our wonderful world-class aquifer.
I love it. Okay, we have about 6 minutes left, so I'm going to get to this next couple of questions. Blue Zone Initiative would be a great addition to our community. How are you going to help Scottsdale become Blue Zone certified?
So Blue Zone certification, I think have wonderful objectives of longevity. And my understanding is Blue Zone is that it has to do with longevity.
Correct.
Now, my understanding is that there aren't many Blue Zone certified cities across the United States.
Correct.
Loma Linda, right? That's the only one. Am I correct? Is that correct?
I think there might be a few, but there's less than a handful.
There's
Correct.
less than a single handful,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk about the aims. I don't care about an actual title of certification. I care about the outcome for Scottsdale families, right? So we want longevity for our families. How are we going to have a family-first approach to be healthy, happy, and joyous, right? My parents live in Scottsdale. My mother-in-law live in Scottsdale. They're both 10 minutes away from me. Thank God, with my 4 kids, I have help. I don't know how other people do it, because thank God for the big family. But the way we create a happy, healthy Scottsdale is making sure that we focus entirely on the family, which means the home, a good education, a safe place to live. Public safety is a hallmark of my campaign, making sure that we don't place too much of a regulatory burden on our growth. And again, we talked about safe water, making sure that our community has, more so than a top-down diktat from the city, I want to bring a bottom-up type of community together, where we know that Scottsdale is for residents. Scottsdale is for families. Whether you're 2 or 102, people want to come here across the country and visit and make a home safe. So that's where I step in and say that that's what we need more of in Scottsdale. I love this city, and I want to see more of the best of it come out.
I love it. I'll get to this last question very quickly. Short-term rentals and noise complaints is something that we have constantly. The city council has already done so many new rules and regulations to deal with that. What are your suggestions to help with this?
Right. So short-term rentals, they exist, unfortunately, right? We have to live with it, and there are those who benefit from it, but there's a difference between a city like Scottsdale, and we don't want to turn into a city like Sedona that has I believe an 82% short-term rental ownership of all homes in Sedona. That's crazy. There's a big difference between an individual owning a short-term rental and a corporation that's faceless out of state with nobody who's local for a phone number that can have a huge nuisance issue, lower property values. Again, what do I go back to? Scottsdale's for families, right? And I don't want to see the crazy bachelor party that goes to all hours in the night on a Wednesday, and I'm living next door, and I'm calling a number, a corporate 800 number with nobody on the ground to answer to, and things don't get solved. So what do I believe in? Having an individual who's local, who owns that rental or is responsible for that short-term rental, that you can call directly. If they get a noise complaint, I am a very strong advocate of nuisance law. I'm an attorney. I own a law firm, Kwasman Law, here in Scottsdale. I understand that problems happen. Nobody's going to be perfect, but this whole 3, 4, 5 strikes, 5 chances before I'm not into that. 2 strikes, you're out. I want to be able. If you cannot keep your noise down, you should not be a short-term rental in our neighborhood, right? So I believe in those type of controls to make sure we flourish with liberty, but at the same time have a neighborhood and family-first approach to our lives.
I love it. All right, last question. Why should we vote for Adam Kwasman for Scottsdale City Council?
I love this question.
I bet you do.
I'm a father, a husband. I am a man of faith. My children were all born in Scottsdale. My synagogue is in Scottsdale. My business is in Scottsdale. I've created jobs in Scottsdale, and I love Scottsdale. There's a lot of things that Scottsdale is doing right, but we could always be better. I believe that I have some of the best qualifications to ever run for the Scottsdale City Council. For that reason, I'm endorsed by City Councilman Barry Graham and Kathy Littlefield. I'm very proud for those endorsements, and it's because of my time in the legislature as well as my time in the private sector growing and building something strong and anchored here. When it comes to any issue, I'm going to have a family first and residents first approach. And I know that we will make sure that Scottsdale is beautiful for future generations.
I love that. Thank you so much. Go vote. I've said this after every single person that I've interviewed, every single candidate. You've heard it at least 9 times. Please go vote. It is your due diligence. It is your right. You have this. Use it to your advantage. Ballots are being mailed out July 5th with in-person voting on July 30th. I am the one. I'm such a sucker. I love going in the ballots. I cry every time. I love voting. Please go vote. And to learn more about Adam Kwasman, you can visit adamkwasman.com. Again, as with everyone else, the link to his website will be in the description of this episode, as well as our YouTube channel. And as always, reach out to Adam with any additional questions. Every candidate wants to hear from you, and he is no exception to that. So thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you.
Best of luck in the elections.
I appreciate it.
And we'll talk soon.
Have a great one.
Thank you so much to all the city candidates for coming out and talking to us. I hope you learned something about them. If you want to know more, reach out to any of the 9 candidates. All of their emails are listed in the description of each episode, along with on our YouTube channel. They're here to talk to you. They represent you. Get to know them. Ask them anything. They really do want to hear from you. Have a wonderful week, Scottsdale. Keep vibing, and I'll see you around town.